Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Stetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 278, and we got a packed show despite the fact that Spurs men did not play a game. We're going to talk about Spurs women in a defeat in the North London Derby. But before we get to that, we're going to welcome in the Todd father himself. He is at TC_Show. Todd, what is up, my friend?
Any day, brother. Any day that you can hop on a pod and talk to your boys about the good old Tottenham Hotspur is a good fucking day. What we have to talk about is the glory that is not having to discuss another Tottenham Hotspur men debacle, which is great news. So I'm certainly thankful that I'm thankful for the respite. That's where we're at. For not having to watch us flail against relegation competition.
Scott is also here. He is at Scott G. Berg. Scott, what's going on, man?
I'm a sad Iowa State Cyclone today, is what I am.
Yeah, you are.
Still. But what always cheers me up is seeing Todd jam so hard to the intro music that he fades off the screen.
It's a banger. I don't know what you want from me.
It is a banger, man. It is, and it always, like I said, brings joy to me to start the pod watching Todd vibe out the intro music. But yeah, as you both said, it was wonderful that Spurs did not play this week. Just an absolute gift. We'll be back to watching that dross in 10 days or so. But we'll enjoy it while we have it.
We will. I want to timestamp this for the listeners. It is March 30th. It is late Monday evening here in the U.S. We are podcasting a little bit blind because Spurs, on the men's side of things, did make an announcement yesterday that Igor Tudor has left the club. We are going to get into that stuff. Before we get into the managerial stuff, I do want to touch on Spurs women. Saturday, went to the Emirates, were defeated 5-2. This was a match that, look, I'm just going to level with folks. I wouldn't have expected Spurs women to go in there to the Emirates and win. I know that we have seen a lot of improvement in the club this season, but they've obviously hit a little bit of a skid here toward the tail end with some injury and players just kind of running out of gas, it seems, a little bit. For those unaware, there's only 4 matches left in the season, and one of those is the FA Cup, which comes up a week from today, next Monday, against Chelsea. But 3 league matches left, and you know, I was talking with Caroline a little bit the other day in our group chat about the fact that it feels like the chips have already been pushed in on this season for Spurs women, in the sense that I think we have learned everything that we're going to learn about this club. And this final stretch, I'm not going to say it's meaningless, because I do think you can still learn more. But I do feel that these final stretch of games aren't going to mean as much in the long term because, and especially, and we're going to come on to this too, but of the news of last week of all these extensions, including one for the head coach, Martin Ho. Scott, before we get into kind of the extensions of it all, I know you watched this match, as did I. It really wasn't a great match to watch. It was very, very Arsenal heavy until I would say the last 30 minutes or so when Beth England came onto the pitch as a sub. And Spurs actually had, I think, the better of it in the last 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that, well, let me start by saying the first half was absolutely atrocious. But like you said, I don't think it's something that we couldn't have somewhat expected, right? To get a pummeling. We were wide open in the midfield. They pushed through us way too easily. Missing Claire Hunt has been extremely problematic, and I think it's something that we will see addressed next season, whether that's obviously Claire Hunt being fit again or even an improvement on a Claire Hunt to pair Toko Koga, right, who will certainly be a center back for the next 5 to 10 years if he wants to be one at Spurs, right? We can only hope so, but extremely talented. But we're missing Claire Hunt right now. And I think that that mixes up the midfield quite a bit, right? I think that's why you see Spence and Sumanen leaving so much space is there's just that lack of cohesion between the defensive midfielders or the double pivot and the center backs, and those 4 work very closely together. So, yeah, I guess I say that all to say I'm not trying to bag on the team when I say we were awful in the first half, but the way that we just got carved up through the middle was something that absolutely cannot happen. And like you said, we turned it around from a performance standpoint, right? But ultimately, you can never walk into the Emirates give up a 30-minute hat trick to Alicia Russo or 27 minutes or whatever it
Well,
was, right? And expect to get anything out of that match, Todd.
yeah, I see where you're at on that, man, and I agree. Molly Bartrop did not cover herself in glory in
No.
this match, but Alicia Russo is arguably the best number 9 in the league. I think you can say.
Yeah, I think that's a good
Coming
shot.
off of a 20 goal, yeah, coming off of a 20 goal season last year, it's hard to argue with the production that you've seen from her yet again. They were better than us on the day. I don't really know how much more you can say about that. Obviously, we dealt with some injuries. I thought we battled. I agree we did in that last 30 minutes have the better of them for the majority of it, though we did give up a 90 plus 5 goal trying to press the match. So, I mean, it's like,
That happens for
I,
sure.
I agree with you that there's 100%, but I mean, like, I agree. Like the Olivia Holdt extension, the extension for Martin Hall. I think that we believe in what this project is, which is a far cry from what we saw last year. And I think that as you're looking at the first year of a project, like a solid mid-table finish and a couple of good cup runs kind of puts you in a decent position. You signed a bunch of people that are clearly making an impact on your team. You're getting healthy players back. I think we need to improve in the striker position. I think we need to find more direct routes to putting the ball in the back of the net.
So that's what I wanted to come on to as well, because as I mentioned, when Bethany England came on in this match in the 71st minute, she came on with Evelina Summanen, who are two players that I'm a little bit confused as to what's going on, because when they come onto the pitch, the mood kind of shifts and all of a sudden Spurs get on the front foot. And I'm curious because we have not really seen either of those two players in the starting 11 for extended periods of time. I don't know if this is managing minutes. I don't know if there's some kind of injury that's being managed for either player. I don't know if this is a phasing out of Bethany England, to your point, TC, of, trying to move younger players like Tinka Tanberg into the mix, trying to move Signy into the mix a little bit more as starters and kind of pass this baton to some younger players, which, by the way, I'm not opposed to. I just would like to know if that's what we're seeing or if there's something that we're missing, because I want Bethany England on the pitch whenever she's available to be on the pitch. She's a dynamic scorer. She proved it with another goal in this match. And as a captain, I think that the spirit of the team lifts when she is out there to be a leader on the pitch. And I'm just a little bit confused as to why we haven't seen as much of that. But to your point, TC, this project I'm fully on board with. And I know that we all said that about Robert Villaham 2 years ago and Rhiannon Skinner before that, and so on and so forth. But
I like Skinner. Wilhelm is nonsense. I saw his Portland Thorns at the weekend against my San Diego Wave, and they were atrocious.
Well, but didn't they win their first 3 of the season as well? Like
they did, but I watched this style of play, and I looked at it and went, "This is why you got the sack."
And that's fair, and that's totally fair. But I think that we know now with Martin Ho, and we know this not only by what we've seen with our very eyes, but obviously the club, as we alluded to, has handed out this quote-unquote long-term deal. We don't know what that means for any of these players because they're not really disclosing a number of years. The same is the case with Olivia Holdt. She gets a new deal, as does Matilda Vinberg. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely on board with bringing Olivia Holdt back for as long as you want. She's been incredible. Vinberg, I think.
Vinberg as well. Vinberg had an assist.
Yeah.
Vinberg's been good. It's an interesting move to commit long-term to Vinberg in this spot because I think that's another area where you could improve, but you need depth as well. So I'm not, again,
she's only 23.
I'm not opposed to any of these things. Martin Hope called Spurs a sleeping giant in women's football, and I don't know if that's being bold, but I like the sound of it, and I like the direction.
That's pretty sexy. That's pretty sexy.
I mean,
I'm on board. I'm on board
with
that.
The direction.
I think
really
that
do.
if we read between the lines,
let me ask you this. Yeah, go ahead, Scotty.
No, sorry. I think I'm having a little bit of a lag here, but I think if we read between the lines, there could very well be something to that sleeping giant comment from Martin. We've talked about it. I mean, we've talked about it for the last couple of years that Spurs have the financial capabilities to blow up the women's game if they choose to do that, right? And really start going after things. And I mean, what's the record incoming, like 1.5 million, right? That's a drop in the bucket for Tottenham Hotspur, right? If they choose to do that. And for all the things that I have to say that are not positive about Vinay Venkatesham, and maybe we'll get to some of that, right? The one thing he's proven,
we're
I hope
going to,
so.
don't worry.
He's putting his money where his mouth is when it comes to the improvement of the women's team, right? At least from 30,000 feet at, blind, that's how it looks. We never know the finer details, right? But I think all I'm saying is there could very well be something to that. The money's there, the ambition appears to be there. If we look at what's happening right now in the second half of the season, I think what they did in January was significant. I mean, Blackstead and Gopset are both
I
real
agree.
players, right? Like real players that take your team to another level. I think Tinka Tanberg is a good either first or second striker, right? But I think they've improved that position for sure. Bethany England, I suspect that they're working towards getting her more into a creative role as she enters the later stages of her career, and her ability to conduct. And even as a number 10, you don't have you need to be technically gifted, right? But you also, if you can find someone like her who can conduct and and just control everything that's happening as a leader, like you just talked about, right? In the 10 position, that can be effective. So I suspect that's what we're seeing. But all these pieces that I'm talking about, all these moves, make me feel like in January they said we're doing really well this season. We're going to go big, and it's either going to take us into the Champions League or it might get a little rocky as we integrate new pieces. And if that's the case, no problem. We're going to be really good next season, right? And we have to improve the squad. So I think we're seeing a little bit of the latter there, right? And of course, we would love the former, but regardless, everything we're seeing now is in preparation for next season. We can't get relegated. We really could get Champions League, but we won't, right? And so you see what you have as you prepare for next season.
Well, let me ask you about this. Do we have a shot at this cup? Is that why Beth England sat the bench?
I would say
Are
probably
we-
not, but you never know. And the cool thing about it is it's a free hit. Like you can go out there and there's no real pressure for Spurs women to do anything in this game. So go out there, do what you want, and see about it.
I think it's a fair question,
Scott,
though,
to your
Todd.
point,
Sorry.
Scott, to your point that you make about yes, like you're in a safe zone. That's part of the benefit right now is that you're in that middle of the pack. You're not battling relegation like you were last season, and you can kind of set yourself up over these next few matches to, okay, if it gets rocky, it gets rocky, but we're setting ourselves up for something bigger down the line. And I think everyone can see that, and obviously the club can as well, in rewarding the coach and some players with some extensions and to try and kind of keep this momentum rolling into the next WSL season. Obviously, Spurs women not battling relegation this season. Spurs men, on the other hand, completely in it. And that's where we need to go next, because the club did announce on Sunday that they have agreed to a mutual parting of ways with Igor Tudor, something that we alluded to last week was going to happen. We knew it. I think the club, whether they waited because Igor Tudor was dealing with personal tragedy in his life, whether they waited until they got someone else in line to take the job, we don't really know all the answers to that. But they did make the announcement on Sunday. Before we get to what's next for this club, are there any parting thoughts we have on the Igor Tudor regime, however short it was?
Yes. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, my condolences to Igor Tudor and his family for the loss of his father. Finding that out when you're on the touchline in the middle of a relegation fight. I can't imagine that there are harder things to overcome in a professional managerial career than that. And so I just want to say that though we knew that your time at this club was going to be short-lived, thank you for being a professional and for doing everything that you could, despite your failures, to help this club along. I wish you peace in this time of tragedy, and I wish you safe travels on your next journey.
Well said.
Yeah.
The club Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just gonna say I echo that. I can't I can't even wrap my head around how difficult that would be, like Todd said. And I mean, what's the result even matter at that point, right? If something like that happens. So I really feel for Igor Tudor, praying for the family for sure. I echo everything that Todd said. And I do think, as someone who follows Italian football and really enjoys Italian football, obviously he's Croatian, right? But spent his career in Italy and last coached in Italy, right? I think Tudor is a good manager who will find the right place. So I hope that as Spurs fans we don't write Igor Tudor off and continue to talk about the poor job that he did, because granted, he chose to do it, but he walked into, as we all know, I'm not breaking anyone's brain here, right? An absolute fucking dumpster fire of an organization. And so I just want to make sure that Igor Tudor gets his credit too, because I do think he's a good manager.
Yeah, I put him in the same category as a Christian Stellini, and as far as his Tottenham career is concerned, like, just thanks for the effort, and we wish you well.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But,
Said exactly what I was going to say. Moving on, though, not even joking. Pretty much the exact same sentence I was going to say. So look. Last week it was thought that the name was being thrown out there. Roberto De Zerbi. We've heard the name a number of times linked with Spurs over even the last few cycles. We heard the name once again last week. The thought was last week that Roberto De Zerbi wanted no parts of Spurs until the summer, and some kind of guarantee that they were going to be staying in the Premier League. He would sign on for a long-term deal in the summer, but didn't want to come in to try and help Spurs stave off relegation. We've reached Monday evening, and all the reporting is that the club has apparently sweetened the pot and offered De Zerbi a lucrative 5-year deal, and he is now apparently open to the idea of joining Spurs immediately. We have, of course, seen the pushback this week. We've seen it from many of supporters groups, THFC Flags, Women of the Lane, Proud Lily Whites. We've seen a lot of supporters groups come out against the idea of hiring Roberto De Zerbi. And for those who don't know why that is, it's not just because Roberto De Zerbi is apparently a massive asshole, which can be vouched for by many people, but apparently he's also someone who has spoken a lot of words about Mason Greenwood that are, defending of his actions. And I'm not here to have a real morality debate. Like there's no morality to that. But I think what makes this club unique, and what makes any football club unique in this sense, is that we've seen this kind of pushback work in the past. We saw it with, what was the guy's name?
Gattuso.
We saw it happen there. And it
said
worked.
homophobic things in a press conference, and
exactly.
not too far off of what we're discussing right now.
So, and there have been emails sent, I know, by everyone here, and a lot of folks that we know, to the club, to the shareholders, to the people that matter. Whether or not
my first email got rejected, Andrew, because there were curse words in it.
Oh, well, that's, if anybody was going to have curse words in their email, I would presume it would have been this guy. So that makes sense to me. Whether or not any of this pushback actually influences the club, we cannot control as fans. And I think that's important to state, because we can only do so much. And I also just think that what anyone chooses to do from here forward, whether that's not watch the games, not go to the games, drop their support of the club entirely, I also think is completely up to them. And whatever every individual's decision is with that is that's their own. I'm just kind of bummed about all of this, guys. Like, that's kind of where I am. And Spurs have been bumming me out enough this season that I didn't really want to come in here tonight and be bummed some more talking about this situation, but it's where we are. So I guess I just want to turn it over to you guys. And how are we feeling about this? Because I think that this sucks, and I don't want to be excited for 7 more games if I know that it's being led by a guy like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come out and just say, and I really mean it. This is not a grand gesture. This is not some like empty threat towards the club, but I will no longer consider myself a fan of the men's team if you losing
Scott,
me.
we're gonna go to Todd, because we cannot make up anything that you're saying, boss. We're gonna need you to get on some better internet. Todd, take it over for me, bud.
Yeah. No worries. That makes me sad because I really wanted to hear Scott's take on that. So I'll say three things on this because always three. The first thing that I will say is that I feel like I'm in a really tough spot here because I have my personal beliefs about the situation, but I also have objective beliefs about the situation, and it makes it difficult. My personal beliefs about this situation are um, attitude follows leadership, right? And this guy's a known asshole who is Conte light, for lack of a better term, Conte without the accolades, for a better term. He is someone who is extremely intense. There are no days off with this guy. His football is what it is, and we can come onto that conversation. But as I think we need to be objective Tottenham podcasters about this. But before we get there, the thing that I want to say, and most importantly, is that what Mason Greenwood did is indefensible. It is indefensible. And the fact that not only did this man in De Zerbi come out and advocate heavily for him joining Marseille and for him once he got to Marseille and saying things that to the effect of, he is a good young man who is paid dearly for the mistakes of his past, I believe, is the literal translation of what he said. I don't fault him for having that opinion because Mason Greenwood clearly has paid dearly for his mistakes. Being dropped by Nike, being dropped by Man United, being dropped by England, all of the things. But then he goes further and says he almost makes it out as though Mason Greenwood is in some way the victim for in this scenario. And I can't stand behind that. There's also been another member of the squad that had similar allegations levied against him, and De Zerbi was the first person to stand up and speak out publicly on the player's behalf. There is no place in Tottenham Hotspur for that type of behavior or mindset. And I said as much to the club. We're looking for someone to bring us out of the darkness, Andrew. And somebody who is a known asshole and who yells and screams at their players and who has literally had to be separated by coaches from one of their young players on the training pitch. Like, that's not a leader of men that I want Tottenham Hotspur to follow. I don't want him to be the figurehead of my club. And he is the de facto figurehead of the club as the head coach. He's the one we're going to hear from. He's the one whose face is going to be right next to the crest of our beloved club. And I don't want it to be a man who thinks and acts in the way that Roberto De Zerbi does. That's the thing I'm wrestling with the most. The third thing that I will say to you, and finally, is that this conversation is a byproduct of the real fucking problem with this club. And that is the fact that the people who are in charge that have made the worst fucking season possible a reality for Tottenham Hotspur fans on the back of their first European trophy in 41 fucking years are the same people that are making the decision as to what we do from here. And what I would say to you is that every single one of those motherfuckers is complicit in this decision if it goes forward, and they should all be removed from their post.
It really does feel like this club needs a full reset from the top down. Scott, you're back with us. What are the feelings we have?
Yeah, pardon the audio problems there, but I would start by saying this is not some sort of grand gesture. This is not an empty threat towards the club, right? But if he's appointed, I'm going to not continue to support the men's team until there's an end to that appointment, and maybe even for some time after that, right? Because I'll still have grievances with the organization for making that decision. As much as I would love to say that I will not support the organization, period, I have too much respect for the women's game and the progress being made there and Tottenham Hotspur women. It's not their fault, right? And so I will continue to support the women's team, but I just I don't have the capacity in my life anymore to ignore suffering to enjoy something that's arbitrary and not like crucial to my life, right? I won't do that any longer. And I'm not coming from some, morality soapbox. I'm not a perfect person. I make mistakes, right? But I believe after murder, sexual assault is the second most egregious thing you can ever do to another human being, right? It's a horrible thing, right? And as I said to the club today in my emails to them, people who have survived sexual assault, that is an extremely long road to healing and recovery, right? And you learn to live with it, but it never goes away, like ever, right? And so the women and men and people of this team who are survivors of sexual assault should not have to stare their trauma in the face every time they watch Tottenham Hotspur play. And that's like just point blank period, the issue that I take with this, right, is they're choosing to ignore the trauma and suffering of people who support their club because they think it's right for the on-field performance or the business or whatever it is. And that's just absolute bullshit. Whatever. I'll keep it at that, right? But I will no longer support the men's team if they appoint this person. And I will say, I do have hope that the fans will make a difference and this won't happen, right? Because of what happened with Gattuso. And I do think that enough noise is being made right now that I'm not sitting here 100% convinced that it's going to happen. But even if it doesn't, like, it almost did. And that's still something that I'm going to have to wrestle with ethically going forward. So
you're 100% right about that. And listen, by the time some of you are listening to this, it may already be done. Like he may have been appointed as the manager, and not just interim. This could be a long-term deal that goes through. I think where I want to approach this from now is, look, I'm going to make a point that I think a lot of the cynics are going to make, and I think there's validity to this point. What I'm going to say is, defending the actions of an abuser is not the same as being an abuser. I want to make that really clear.
And it has to be said. Thank you.
That is, there are two very, very different things. The yes and to that would be, you don't have to settle. Like, I know that you think you do, and when I say you, I mean you, Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah. You think you have to settle for this. You don't. You can have a higher standard. There can be that. And I think the other thing this is where I really come to it, because I think about this from this perspective. If Roberto De Zerbi comes in and rescues this team from relegation, are we going to feel really, really great about that?
No.
Are we going to feel really great? Are we going to think that was
depends
awesome?
It depends on how he does it. He could choke out fucking Ibasuma on the training ground, and we could be like, who the fuck is this guy? No, listen, if we're going to be saved from relegation, 3 points cures all ills. It's the old soccer adage, right? Like if we're going to be saved from relegation, are we going to be excited about it? But no. But over the summer, you're going to have all the, all the punters in the bar looking around going, well, they kept us up.
But I guess my point is, are you going to be excited about a future with Roberto De Zerbi in the Premier League going into next season if he keeps us up?
Are we talking strictly football now? Because this is a different conversation.
I'm not. I want to have that conversation, but I'm not talking about strictly football.
Okay.
I'm talking about...
Well, no, because he's still a fucking deplorable human.
And that's kind of what I mean.
I would rather get relegated.
I get that this is a move that's being made.
I would honestly rather get relegated than have him say
You may get both, homie.
Yeah, right. Not yet.
I think that's kind of where I'm at, and we can talk about the actual football, because what I'll say is, if you remove everything away, Roberto De Zerbi football is actually something that I think would be attractive, and actually
especially with the players that we have.
especially with the players that we have and the players that we could potentially add. I get all of that. The other thing is, it took Roberto De Zerbi 7 matches to get his first victory when he joined Brighton. That's how many matches he has to keep us
and
up.
Look, on that note,
that's the other part of this. I don't think this is some miracle worker coming in.
Dude, that's exactly the conversation that I wanted to have. And I give a ton of respect to Chris Poros. Those who listen maybe know her, right? Chris is fantastic and said some really good things today that I want to echo, right? From a footballing perspective, right? We can remove everything that we've already talked about, right? But Roberto De Zerbi, I'm not convinced he's even a good footballing manager. Like, sure, there's maybe attractive football at times, right? But it fizzled out at Brighton and became a mutual consent departure, right? And then the same thing happened at Marseille. The football fizzled out and they departed by mutual consent, right? Most importantly, this is the most important piece of all of this. He needs time to implement whatever attractive football he plays, right? Like, what we need right now is someone to come in, play a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1, because that's what everyone has played since they started playing football, right? And just get results. Like, we do not have the luxury of bringing in someone to implement their style of football. I do not understand at all how this even makes sense, and it continues to beg the question of what sort of incompetence is happening at Tottenham Hotspur, right? This doesn't make any sense from a PR perspective, from a respecting your fans perspective, or from a footballing perspective at all. And again, now that I think about it, that makes perfect sense as to why this is happening based on the organization that it's happening to, or, within.
Yeah. I would fully agree with the majority of what you said there, Scotty. They gave him a 15 million euro guarantee just for showing up. Yeah. Stay
Which
up
is
or
what
not.
It takes at this point, right?
Stay up or not. It's what it takes at this point. If you want to hire fucking Roberto De Zerbi, you got Ben Davies in the wings. You got Ryan Mason doing fuck all. You could bring in Harry Redknapp. We need a vibes manager. We needed vibes. This is not vibes. This is grumpy grandpa coming in here yelling at you. And my point is that,
by the way,
do we have
they just had grumpy grandpa yelling at them in a different language. That's all they've done here.
This is what the fuck I'm talking about. Now, exactly. You got exactly what I'm saying. Like, my frustration with this point is as follows. They didn't need to do this for the next 7 matches. They wanted to do this before the end of the season so that they could say, well, we plugged this gap. We're going into next season. Regardless, we got it covered. And to be fair, if you zoom out and you look at it from the defeatist perspective of Van Venkatesham, say we go down, but you've linked Roberto De Zerbi to a 5-year deal. Well, then you're in the championship with Tottenham Hotspur playing fucking Roberto De Zerbi football against construction workers, and you're crushing it. And no disrespect to the championship, to be fair. I mean, those are proper.
That was actually a lot of disrespect to the championship.
There's their proper professionals. I get it. All the things. Yeah, it's probably a better league than the MLS. I'm not disrespecting the league. I'm just saying there's a lot of Millwalls in that fucking league, my guy. There's a lot of people that are in there just to kick fucking lumps out of you as opposed to play proper football. And we're going to be Roberto De Zerbiing it up. So, like, from a business standpoint, if you're going to give a manager this much money anyway, like, I get that you're trying to get him in now, as opposed to paying whatever you're going to have to pay him in the summer, especially if you get relegated, because then there's no fucking way you're getting Roberto De Zerbi if you're in the championship. So, like, I get that that's what they're doing, but this feels very, very desperate. And it feels like decisions that are being made by non-football people. And what I would say to you is that the reason why we're in this fucking position in the first place is because of Vinay Venkatesham. And what I mean by that is that he should have sacked Thomas Frank 2 months prior to when that man actually got the sack. And that was against Vinay Venkatesham's wishes in the first fucking place. And Johan Lange. That you scout does not evade my fucking ire today, because all of this is the brain trust of those two clowns. And by the way, there's an incredible meme going around where those two are standing next to each other dressed in the Dumb and Dumber tuxes, and it's fucking epic because it's the perfect representation of what Tottenham Hotspur fans have been dealing with this entire season. I just want to zoom out a little bit and realize that less than a year ago, we won a fucking European trophy. And now we're over here talking about relegation and hiring a fucking rapist apologist on this fucking day where I'm looking at you guys going, how the hell are we in this position with the team that we had, with the stadium that we have, we literally had 40,000 people on the high road with flares and buses to watch us get stomped 3-0 at home to Nottingham Forest. I'm looking at this situation, Andrew, and I'm saying all of this lays squarely at the feet of Enoch and Vinay Venkatesham. And I don't see anything over the course of the next 7 weeks that gives me any fucking hope that any decision that they are going to make is going to improve our position one iota.
I can't really disagree.
Yeah, well said, Todd. And I'm just going to pause for a second and say that as much as we're talking about Roberto De Zerbi, I think it would be unfair to not talk about Vinay Venkatesham, because he is without a doubt, if this goes through, he is without a doubt my internet.
Yeah, it's not great.
So when I was a boy, my grandmother had an antenna outside of her house, and I had to like take it and go outside and move it when it rained. There was like a cord attached to it, and you had to like move it around so you could get the reception. Like, listen, I know Iowa is a special circle of hell, but I'm hoping that we can do amazing things for the internet connection there in the next 5 minutes.
I believe he's saying that that he agrees the ire should also be placed at Vinay Venkatesham through the sound waves of the internet. And yes, 100%. Like, all of this goes much higher than we're pointing the ire at, but it's all got to trickle down somehow, and it's all got to get better on the pitch. And there's only 7 more matches for them to actually have said improvement. So we'll have to see how that comes about. Part of the problem that we've all been dealing with this team, though, is not just poor management, poor play, poor leadership, poor ownership. It's also all the injuries. And we do have a few injury things we want to discuss before we get out of here today, because Dejan Kulusevski was seen limping last week on Sweden duty, and the internet went wild, as you might imagine. He took to social media to say that he had a small procedure a few weeks ago to, quote, remove some stuff that was floating around in his knee, but claims that the knee is now great, and, you know, love that for him. I'm really happy for him. The procedure, according to The Athletic, was what the club called a, quote, small intervention, aka arthroscopic surgery on said knee. TC, I know you've got a lot of Decky feelings. Where are we at?
First things first. If we remember correctly, as much as we wanted Decky back, as much as the club said, oh, it's just whatever it is, he got injured on the final Premier League game of the season, if I'm not mistaken, or the second to last Premier League game of the season was against Crystal Palace. Chris Richards got him. And that hasn't been a year yet. So you're looking at this going, it's a patella injury, and it hasn't been a year yet. Kind of understandable why he is where he is. Now, the biggest concern that we're having right now is the fact that there's still shit floating around in his knee. That's messy. And what that says to me is more negligence from the Tottenham Hotspur physio staff. That's a different conversation for a different day. Decky being back in Sweden gear, despite the fact he's not an international duty, the fact that he was there is a big deal. The fact that they brought him in is a big deal. Truthfully, I don't expect to see Decky on grass until preseason next year. That's what I believe.
At this point, I mean...
No, it's I don't want to go too far with that. I want to look at this realistically and say there's a year to 15-month recovery period from a patella injury, and this is what we're looking at. So we'll see you in a year, Decky.
I think the thing that everyone just loses their mind about is that initially Ange said it was a little knock. And
Okay, so okay, hold on. He walked off the fucking pitch. The physios fucking checked him. They checked him after the match. Ange was working off of the information that he has. He's not a fucking doctor. He's not a physiotherapist. I'm simply saying that the man got really misquoted in the sense that he was quoting information that he had in the moment, and that information was inaccurate.
We're not blaming Ange. You don't need to come to your Australian uncle's defense here. We're not blaming Ange. I'm saying
that
was the quote. That was the quote that was brought out, and that's what everyone ran with. So everyone's just leaning on that timeline as opposed to the timeline that you have more accurately presented in front of us here. And I think that's what we're all going to have to wait for. Sweden is not even in the World Cup yet. They do have to win one more game, which is going to be played as we're speaking tomorrow. They play Poland, by the way.
It looks good.
Sweden and Poland, Kosovo.
Fuck Matty Cash.
Czechia
That's a
and
standard
Denmark,
position.
And Scott probably his internet's probably got to be saved up to watch Italy take on Bosnia and Herzegovina tomorrow for their shot at the World Cup.
I'm in a weird spot with that Denmark match. I got to be honest with you, because I mean, obviously, love myself some Danish football. Christian Eriksen with an assist at the weekend, my Danish prince.
Yeah, I love them too, but I also have very Czech heritage, so. I'm also
and Vuskovic scored for Czechia, so or I'm sorry, for Croatia. Apologies. So I have a good vibes with that guy as well. But the Czechia match, I like the Czech Republic a lot, man. I like their football. So.
I want to talk about another injury. I want to say news, but it's not really news. It's something we speculated on last week. Obviously, we know Guglielmo Vicario had hernia surgery last week following the Nottingham Forest match. In a post on Instagram after surgery, he received a comment from one of the assistant coaches that said, "So much respect for what you went through for months to be there for the team every game." And this is, again, something that we kind of speculated about. We wondered aloud last week on the podcast, how long has Vicario been dealing with this hernia? As I mentioned on the podcast, I've dealt with hernias before. They're not fun to deal with. They can be very painful. They can be very difficult to move around when you have one. They can linger for months as well before actually being dealt with. So if you're a world-class athlete and you're dealing with a hernia for months, I can see that affecting your play. And I guess my question is, and I know what my answer is, but does this change our opinion at all on Vicario and the season that he's had? And what does that present for us going forward? Is there any perspective change because of this injury?
And the only thing that this does is it somehow lessens the debacle of the season that Vicario has had. I mean, he's literally a goal worse than the next worst keeper in the league for goals given up. He's a fucking shambles, Andrew. And the only thing that this does is help elevate his stock slightly for our asking price for him to go back to Italy.
And I don't disagree with you. I guess everyone's going to be looking at me to say, oh, does this change? No, my opinion on Vicario has not changed because my opinion on Vicario is the same that it was before he's had this horrendous season.
Well, it was the same as when he got here, Andrew. He's the same keeper as when he got here. And I guess that's the thing that I'm... And what's funny, our greatest disappointments in life often comes from our own unmet expectations. And my hope and expectation of Vicario when he got here is that he would elevate his level of play to the level of play of the Premier League. And quite frankly, he hasn't. He is still world class as a reaction goal, a reaction save specialist. That is his world class characteristic. Everything else in his game has stayed the same or declined. And so as you look at that and then you add in the injury, thank you for that last-minute save against Manchester United that won us our first European trophy in 41 years. And I wish you a happy and healthy career in Italy.
I guess the only other question that I would have on Vicario is, had the club really decided all season that an injured and hampered Vicario was a better option than
Better
Anton and
than
Kinski?
Anton and Kinski.
Other than the one game
Well,
where we saw Anton and Kinski, obviously.
well, I would say three things, always three. The first thing I would tell you is that it definitely was enough for Thomas Frank, but to be fair, Thomas Frank, I was not impressed with the way that he deployed our squad throughout the entire year that he was here. You can look no further than Matthias Tell as to how he mismanaged talent in the squad. I think he absolutely should have given Kinski more opportunities to play so that his first opportunity, essentially, since the early League Cup rounds, was in a Champions League match, right? A knockout game in the Champions League, for that matter. Anyhow, the second thing on that is I told you point fucking blank that Kinski is not good enough to be a top 6 goalkeeper in the Premier League. And I know he's young and I know he's a project and all the fucking things. But as he stands right now, the key elements of his game that he is missing is the shot stopping. And you got to be able to stop shots at this level, my guy. Playing out from the back with his feet, fantastic. Distribution, can't complain one bit. Reaction saves, dog shit. He pisses down his leg.
Yeah. And he's good at all those other things other than on rainy nights in Italy. Like, that's the only
And the last thing that I will say on this entire situation is fuck the Tottenham Hotspur board for putting us in a position where we have to choose between Guglielmo Vicario and Antonin Kinski as our number 1 choice goalkeeper. Fuck you.
Hopefully not for long. Lastly, on the injury front, James Maddison. You wanted to talk about James Maddison and his recovery. Of course, Maddison's a name we may see by the tail end of this season for a brief appearance or two.
First thing that I want to say about James Maddison is that he's already come out and said if we go down, he's staying. Which, fucking, number one, that's my dude. You're going to ride or die when we go to the championship? You didn't when you were with Leicester and you went down and you won an FA Cup with them. So if you're telling me that you're going to stay now, that's my dude. Number two thing that I will say is that we are a long, long way away from James Maddison being Premier League match fit. Okay? I don't want anybody to get it twisted. He's training on grass. He is training with other people, but it is non-contact. And even when it's full contact in practice, when the lights are the brightest at White Hart Lane and you're out there with 60,000 people screaming, that's a different level of intensity. And it takes, even for the greatest, it takes weeks to get right after a long layoff. So I have no delusions of grandeur that James Maddison is coming back to save us from relegation. The third thing that I will say is that the club put out a piece of content today where it is Matters and Souza and Richarlison doing a two-touch finishing drill from the D. We miss his quality so much. He is one of the only elite players, like skill-wise elite players that we have in our squad. He's one of maybe 5 total at this point. Yeah. And we miss his production on the pitch more than I could possibly tell you. His quality is truly exceptional. And the fact that we don't have it is a big reason why we're in 17th.
I think that with all complete due respect to James Maddison, him committing to staying with Spurs if they get relegated next season is not that surprising to me because I'm not 100% sure of the options that he would have coming off of a knee injury. I think that his number one goal should be to get healthy, and I actually think that you're worried about him getting ready for Premier League football on that knee. I would want him to be championship ready on that knee for football because I think that he could be, if this does go the way that it goes, I think he could be a really, really important part of Spurs attempting to bounce right back up. And
Bro, do you understand how many goals
think,
that guy's gonna fucking score in the championship? God, dog. No, I just,
well, that's what I mean.
I just. It's...
And I think if you surround him with the likes of Mikey Moore and Alfie Devine and all these young players, like that's a team that could
that's
cook.
the other thing. Well, this is so. Let's have this portion of the conversation now. And I know we're long in the tooth on this particular pod, but I want to talk about it because we're here. Okay, I think that some people have come out and said like it could be the best thing that ever happened for our young nucleus of players to go down for a season and pop right back up, because what that essentially means is you trim a bunch of the fat. So you lose a lot of the Christian Romeros and the Mickey Van de Vens and the Pedro Porros, and those guys go. But you bring through and are allowed to play the Mikey Moores and the Alfie Devines and the Archie Grays and the Lucas Bergballs and the Janai Byfields and Luca Williams Barnett would get into that squad. And like, you really give those guys the opportunity to play men's football with the cockerel on their chest in the big stadium with the big lights and the whole thing. You give them the opportunity to bet it. Many people who have followed Spurs far longer than I have pointed out the fact that Glenn Hoddle it went down and was able to hone his craft in the second division at that point in time, and then come back up and become a Spurs legend. And credits that time that he spent in the second division for cutting his teeth, if you will, to bring it back up. I still, and this is me, I still think we stay up by the skin of our teeth, by the narrowest of margins. I still think that we stay up because we're Tottenham fucking Hotspur. But I can't look at the situation, Andrew, and say that outside of the De Zerbi nonsense, that I'm upset about it. And I'll tell you why. It's because we knew Daniel leaving there was going to be a chasm in leadership. We knew that Ange leaving, there was going to be a chasm in personality. We knew Sonny leaving, there was going to be a chasm in leadership and quality. We knew all of these things. And so now here we are, 3/4, 4/5 of the way through the season, looking around going, fuck, this is pretty rough. And I still harken back to the conversation that we had a few weeks ago where I said that this is the culmination of the painful rebuild that Pochettino was discussing. Yeah. Now, I think when you look at guys like Jamie Donnelly, who started at the weekend for Northern Ireland, you look at guys like Alfie Devine, who's balling out of his fucking mind. You look at Mikey Moore, who's been an integral part of the season that Rangers are having in Scotland. Like, you look at Luka Vuskovic, who literally won his 4th Bundesliga Rookie of the Year or Rookie of the Month award this season, last month. You look at this and you say that there is an opportunity for the young nucleus of this team to truly flourish if, for whatever reason, we find ourselves in the second division. However, I mean, and you even look back on like other major organizations that have gone down, other football establishments that have found themselves in the second division of their respective leagues, and how they've been able to bring through talent and youth that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. I can't look at this situation and say that would be a bad thing for Spurs, because I feel like we have a glut of youth right now and no real opportunity to get them meaningful minutes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, there are people who think that a relegation for Spurs would just be devastating, and they would be one of those clubs that sinks even lower just because of the financial impact of it. Look, it's not going to be good if Spurs get relegated, but to your point, it is a kind of a chance for that reset. And you know how Spurs are always trying to find players like, what's that perfect championship loan that you can send these players out on to get them the experience? Well, you don't have to do that if you're in the championship.
Yeah, it would be us.
You fucking play those players. You loan them basically to yourself, and you say, hey, guys, time to shine. Let's go back up. And honestly, like, this is not cope. I'm just to that point where I've kind of settled with it, because this team has been so poorly run, and neither of us see signs of that leadership or that, that run getting better. No, I'm talking about from the higher ups, the leadership.
No, I'm with you. But we do have one potential saving grace, despite
that's never gonna
our
happen.
frailty.
That's never.
You say it's never going to happen. You say it's never going to happen, but I'm going to point to one thing. And what we're talking about for the listener at home is that Manchester City is rumored to be earning a 60-point deduction before the end of the Premier League season. If that happens, two things will occur. The first thing is they will drop below Spurs, and they will get relegated in our place, regardless of where we finish. The second thing that will happen is that Arsenal will forever have a fucking asterisk next to their name for this championship because Man City got relegated based off of a points deduction. And I would be okay with that completely because they don't deserve the glory that they're going to get for winning the league because they're shit boxes and their football is awful and they've essentially turned it into the Royal fucking Rumble in the box on corners, and that's how they've won the majority of their games. I have no patience or appreciation for that at all whatsoever. Fuck those guys. So I would say that there is a silver lining that potentially exists in this entire situation, which is the Arsenal title gets an asterisk, Man City gets relegated in our place, and we stay up. I think that might happen, and the reason why I think that might happen is because I just heard today that Jorge Mendes has offered Bernardo Silva to Barcelona in the summer. And I've heard that Pep is rumored to be leaving. And when you start looking at the captain looking to jump ship and the captain looking to jump ship, I think that might be because the hole's on fire. Just saying.
We shall see. It's one of those things that I just don't believe it'll happen until I see it kind of deal.
But I would expect literally nothing less from you.
I would also expect, because it's Tottenham Hotspur, for that 60-point deduction to come at the start of next season rather than the end of this one. Like that would just be Spurs luck for it to go that way. You know that.
Yeah, it's fair. I'm not going to disagree with that from a luck standpoint. You're absolutely correct.
That is going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, and leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice. We will be back with you next week at some point. Again, Spurs Women do play that FA Cup match on Monday, so be sure to check that out. And we'll probably at that point have a manager to discuss, whoever that may be. Wink, wink. You can follow Scott at Scotchy Bird. Feel free to harass him about his internet. Apparently there was a storm in Iowa tonight, so no internet for the folks. Apologies to everyone there. And you can follow Todd at TC_Show. You can follow me at Astetka, but as I mentioned, most importantly, follow us at Tottenham Depot. We'll talk to you next week. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.